Hi, I'm Janine Firpo, and I'd like to welcome you to the 12th and our last in the series of Fireside Chats leading up to the publication of my book, Activate Your Money, Invest to Grow Your Wealth, and Build a Better World. Next week, we're actually going to launch the book, and I'm really excited to let you know that activateyourmoney.net is already live and contains a lot of resources that you can pull down. And I got copies of the book. It looks great. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited about today's conversation because it is about bringing women together in circles or clubs to help them learn the kind of information in the book and to learn about investing together. As women, we love to collaborate. I've mentioned before that about 150 women helped me bring this book together, and we love to learn together. And as my guest today, I'm going to be talking to Ellen Remmer, who is a champion for an initiative called Invest for Better, which is helping women do just this. It is helping women come together in clubs, to join clubs, to form their own clubs, and to learn together how to be more confident investors and how to align their money with their values. So I'm delighted to have Ellen with me today. Hi, Ellen. Welcome to the Fireside Chat.
Hi, Janine. Great to be here with you.
So great to have you. So, you have had a very long history in philanthropy. You've always done that. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how did you move from just thinking about your money as a way to donate and started thinking more broadly about all of your assets and how all of them can be a force for good?
Sure. It was a journey, but it began with hearing from someone who was doing this. Uh, I remember it vividly. I was at a Philanthropy Foundation conference, and I think it was the Jesse Smith Noyes Foundation. It was one of the early foundations, started talking about how we were letting 95% of our money sit on the sidelines and often be even in conflict with what you were trying to accomplish with your mission. And I thought, that is brilliant. And this was a while ago, but I brought it home to my we have a family foundation, so I brought it home to my co-trustees in the family and to our financial advisors. And basically, there was crickets. I mean, there was that's nice. And the persistent myth that we'd be losing lots of money, and there weren't as many products then, but I really didn't make any traction. But I was hooked, and so I started to learn a lot more about it. I started to partner with folks to learn more about it. It was hard. There weren't guides. There weren't people to help me, and it was a lot of work. But I did, and I took the time, and in the end, I rebelled and took the money that I controlled away from our family assets and started to do that for myself with a specialized advisor. Um, and I should say this: I've been involved in women's philanthropy for a really, really long time. I chaired the Women's Philanthropy Institute at Indiana University and have been a big advocate for women stepping up as leaders in philanthropy. And so there was the jump was to recognize that I myself had not been using the power of my investments. That's translated to, oh my goodness, women everywhere actually are stepping up in philanthropy, but they are not stepping up with their investment portfolios.
And I think it's because it's been hard, right? Just the way that you said it was hard for you, it was hard for me. I even had financial advisors who were values aligned advisors, and they weren't getting me where I wanted to be. And so that's in part why I wrote the book, and it's in part why you started the club. So, how did your first club come together? What was that about?
Well, there was a kind of larger initiative in my day job. I had met up with a group of people who were interested in how do we accelerate the whole impact investing ecosystem. And did we think that a specific targeted focus on women would do that? So that was happening in my day job. I was getting very excited about that. And we were doing a landscape scan and looking at some of the options. Well, meanwhile, I was involved in a women's giving circle. was around, I think, human trafficking, global human trafficking. And there was a woman in the circle who knew that I was getting deeply involved in impact investing. And she said, Ellen, I really want to learn more. Can we have lunch together? So we had lunch together, and she had just been recently divorced, was controlling her money, was determined. Her husband had been in finance, and she really hadn't been involved in the investments. A smart McKinsey consultant type person, but just had not related to her money in those ways. So I said, how about we start this club, this circle? Because this was an idea we've been having at the bigger stage of, I think at that time we called them salons. But the concept of women always loving to come together in small groups and learning and working together. And of course, I met this partner in a giving circle. So certainly a similar type thing. So she said, absolutely, that would be perfect. So we were the pilot circle, and we gathered, we made some rules up about what we wanted to do. In our case, we were targeting very high net worth folks. And my partner very much wanted to make sure we talked about specific investments. So we designed it that way. And of course, as you know, Janine, about that time, somebody introduced me to you, and you were starting up an investment club. So it was perfect. We had two pilots. And yours was more democratized. You had many young people who were still, new, hadn't accumulated a lot of assets. So it was a great experience to compare our two experiences. And I think they were both very successful. And so I took that as, okay, the pilots worked. And then we looked at how to scale it more.
Well, I love that. And I think that what you said, so you said a couple things that I think are really important. So first you mentioned giving circles, and we talked about those in one of the previous Fireside Chats as a form of philanthropy where women and others come together to pool their money and give. So I love that you met your partner in crime there at that. And you also talked about the fact that she was a former McKinsey consultant, right? And we tend to think of McKinsey and Company as this very elite group of people, very smart. And yet here's a woman who came from that background and didn't really understand or know her own money. And now she was divorced and had to think about it. And that is such a common story as well. And I think it's really important for women across ages and across socioeconomic backgrounds to understand that this is not an age or a class thing. This is true of a lot of women. A lot of us don't pay attention to our money. And so part of our goal is to really help them do that. And these circles are a great part of it. So you talked about your own circle. It inspired you, and the one that I started, which is how we met. And it inspired you to go forward and actually create an initiative and do even more. So what are you doing, and how are you supporting women now in their journeys to either join or create their own circles?
Sure. And one last comment too on what you said about women. I think there's also, we all have limited time. So how do we spend our time? And I think for many women, until they start to learn about values aligned and impact investing, I think they didn't realize that it was worth spending the time on it. They'd rather spend time on philanthropy, not recognizing that there is so much power in your investments. Mm-hmm. So the circle, so we had the first two pilots, and through this initiative where we'd gotten some grants, we created an Invest for Better Circle toolkit. And we put it out there and said, okay, people, start circles. And there were half a dozen circles started, maybe four other circles that you and I probably supported to make sure that they happened. And we started to think, we need to do more. This needs to be much more of a cohesive effort. Interestingly, about then, the pandemic hit. And these circles, as you know, were designed to be in person. That's how you build community. It's a lot easier in person, trusted circle of people where you're having side conversations over a glass of wine. But with COVID, we obviously had to adapt to virtual, and we took that opportunity to create cohorts. So we made it much more structured and organized, and we were pretty much designing it as we were running this. But we reached out to a few networks of women to see if they were interested, that we'd been building relationships with, to see if we could there was interest in becoming volunteer leaders of these circles. And the response was amazing. The first time we reached out, we had over 60 people, and this was, we did this over a 10-day period. We really didn't reach out broadly. We had over 60 people say they were interested in co-leading a circle or leading a circle. We ended up probably with more than 50 co-leaders and about 25 circles. So, and we built this whole cohort model where the co-leaders are really part of a community that learns from each other. We coach them. They come together monthly in calls. We bring experts in to teach them and train them. And they're building it with us now, giving us feedback. So that was very successful. So we decided to create another cohort. And now we're talking about doing at least 2 cohorts a year, and perhaps partnering with other organizations to do that as well.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
How many women are you reaching now, do you think?
Well, we think that in each cohort, we're reaching around 250 women. So let's say on average, most circles, we suggest they have 6 to 15 people. And some circles have as few as 6, some have as few as 20. And so to be conservative, we're saying, let's say each circle has 10. So we're saying we're reaching about 250 in the circle, in the cohort. And then, but there's a ripple effect. And when we look at we're just getting the first survey results back from the first cohort. It's just finishing up now. And we asked them about what action steps, what were the results. And one of them is, I'm talking about impact investing a lot with people. And that's just about universal, that everybody's saying that. And then of course, there are many other results and action steps.
Well, the ripple effects are obviously really important in just getting the word out. And I know you're still early on your journey, so I have great expectations that you're just going to grow and scale and grow and scale. And I think it's wonderful that you're actually offering these circle leaders so much support to help them be successful in running these circles, and additional content to help them understand as well. And I know that you have something called Ask Me Anything sessions. What are those, and how are those helping the women in these circles?
So we actually call them Ask the Expert, but I like Ask Me Anything. So maybe we'll do that in the future. And this was organic. It really emerged because one of my advisory committee members was co-leading a circle, and it was the second circle she'd helped to lead, and she said, Ellen, some of these people they need basic investment fundamentals. Like we're like, the way this is designed, we don't spend a lot on the fundamentals. And so she said, we've got to do that. So we started with this Ask the Expert by doing fundamentals, a couple of investment 101s, and these, again, remarkable volunteers who are willing to spend time and do a Zoom session where they present for a while, but it's very interactive. And it's there for both the circle leaders and their members. I think we've come to realize that the circle leaders value them the most because it gives them more confidence as they're running their circles. But we also archive them so they can send them to their circle members. We've gone beyond. We asked them, well, what would you want in these Ask the Expert sessions? So there was a request in the first circle for first cohort for a session on impact measurement. Had a great session with somebody from Bluemark. Then we did one on gender lens investing with Kristen Hull, and we did another one on climate investing. So I think they've been highly valued.
So why do you think, so women obviously come to these circles for the educational material, but why else do you think they might be coming? What do you think is the inspiration for them to take their time and participate in these learning journeys?
I think most of the women who join the circles, it's they've been ready for this. It's been like in the back of their minds. Oh, I've got to do something. I've been hearing about this. I really need to do something. Or they were in a meeting with a financial advisor or something, and they were just had this feeling that something was wrong. So most of these women are ready, and sometimes they're ready for something very specific, like they want to make a change, and sometimes they want to figure out what their first steps are. And then I think women and men as well, but women in particular seem to really enjoy doing this in a trusted community of peers where they feel like they can ask any dumb question and they'll get support. Uh, and and then we really try to build an ethos of accountability, that the point here is not just to learn. I mean, we've all been in groups where there can be a dichotomy between learning and action. So one of the ground rules that's just very clear is this is about helping people move to their next step. And some people are ready to like go all in and move all their investments, and some people are ready to create their new goals. But we try to build into all the meetings a whole discussion about what's holding you back from your next step and how can the group support you with that. So I think people really, they like being part of a group that they then also have a network after the circle is over.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you mentioned earlier was the whole issue of time, and we have to think about our time. So I've been in 3 different investment circles now. The first one I was in my 30s, focused on the stock market. The second one more recently, when I was living in Seattle, and that was specifically focused on impact investing. And then the one that I started myself to help educate other women and test out the ideas that ended up in the book. But one of the things that I found really valuable is learning how to invest can be a very time consuming process. And so being able to share some of those responsibilities, like the research, if you've decided I want a more aligned stock portfolio, doing all that research yourself can be laborious, or understanding better how other people are interacting with their financial advisors rather than having to figure that all out yourself. So it's a great way not to have to reinvent the wheel again and again and again. And I find it to be a great time saver.
Mhm.
And then I've also seen circles, and I know this is not your methodology, at least I don't think it is, but circles where people will come together, much like what we talked about briefly in the giving circles, and actually pool their assets to make investments, often in private companies. So they may not feel confident enough to do that on their own yet. They may not have enough capital to do it on their own, but pooling their money together to make these kinds of alternative investments is something I've seen as well. Are you doing that in your clubs?
So my original circle is in its 3rd year, and we now co-invest. We haven't created a vehicle, but we side by side co-invest. And I would say in the first year there was a little bit of that going on informally with a couple of people, because people are anxious to hear about specific investments and they want to co-invest side by side. We have not we've not set up vehicles for that. I am familiar, I believe the Colorado effort with the women, they have, I think they've set up a philanthropic vehicle that they do the investing from that. So not to say this won't happen in the future. And folks, there's nothing, we try to make this very flexible. So if circle leaders really want to do something like that, go ahead and do that.
Right.
But it's not so simple to set up a vehicle. And
Right.
yeah,
Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, I think again, I think the co-investing sometimes is a little harder in the beginning when you're first learning. So a lot of it, I mean, I think the biggest take home that people often get from this, if they're really new, is they have confidence about asking the right questions. And they no longer feel like they don't even know which questions to ask. And they know that asking those questions is going to be very revealing, and that it's part of their job to ask those questions. So sometimes it's helping them, if they're working with a financial advisor, helping them do that.
That's a really great point. So one of the other things I'm interested in knowing about is the demographics of your clubs. Do you have women from all ages and backgrounds? And how do you think about diversity, particularly now as that's becoming a more prominent um, thing that we need to consider and more prominent culturally?
Yeah, as you know, when I began this, because my background in philanthropy, I was more oriented to high net worth women. And then I became completely won over by the fact that that was not really going to materially change the capital markets. It's not just about women coming to the table. Um, it's about bringing all kinds of people to the table, and people of all different kinds of backgrounds and wealth and demography. So we're really, really committed that if we're going to, have an impact, we need to be as diverse as possible, and especially, bring many women of color. Our first cohort, uh, some, almost half of the circles had at least one woman of color as a co-leader. We were really proud of that. And I don't know the demographics of the members. So hopefully we'll find that out pretty soon. Um, we They cross all kinds of age ranges. Some of them are intergenerational groups. I was surprised, I would say, by there were many that were in the younger, 20s and 30s. There were certainly not even half were focused on high net worth. There were lots focused on unaccredited investors, and as a consequence, often focused on their retirement accounts and things like that. They came from all over the country and Canada, and and I don't even know how they hear about us. We have a group in South Africa. Well, I do know where that one came from, but we have a group in Scotland. We have a group in Australia. We have a group in the Caribbean. So we get these,
Great. So
it's,
this is international.
oh, yes, it is.
This is really a movement. And, one of the things that you just sort of brushed over is that just working with high net women will not, quote, change the capital markets. So I know that, you started out by bringing women together in these circles, but you obviously have much greater ambitions than that. So what do you mean, and what is your goal? What would you love to see happen with the capital markets?
That's a long discussion about what's wrong with the capital markets. And uh, what I would like to see is that we bring more holistic values and approaches to the capital markets so that we're not so focused on just short-term financial returns, and that we think about what is value in the capital markets in a different way, and we measure it and we reward it differently. And I believe that we need to have different voices at the table. I mean, you often say women haven't been part of the conversation. Women, people of color, people without wealth. I mean, especially in our completely polarized, unequal world right now. Unfortunately, wealth has an outsized effect. So we really need to bring everybody's voices there. Otherwise, yeah, they're just going to be valuing continued accumulation of large wealth.
So I just read two things in the last couple of days that really speak to this. So the first was a super interesting comment from Kristen Hall, who is managing a public equities fund. And this is shocking. She said that just 1.3% of the $70 trillion in funds that are managed by fund managers are managed by women and people of color combined. 1.3%. So all that money out there is basically controlled by white males, right? And then I read a piece by Sally Krawcheck, who's the CEO of Alvest, this online robo advisor, financial advisor designed for women. And she said something really interesting. So you brought up the concept of gender investing earlier. And what gender investing tends to mean is that we are thinking about the gender of the recipients of money, or we are thinking about the beneficiary of different kinds of investments. And the gender we tend to think about are women because they're so underrepresented. And she said, we already are doing gender lens investing. It's just not the gender you think. And it really struck me because I realized she's right, right? We're all the money that we're investing in the companies that we're investing in and all of those things, we are supporting men in their work. And we're not really supporting women or people of color. And so starting to think about this and starting to bring in a new type of investor and bring these messages to new types of investors, I think is really important. And I think a lot of us don't think that our little amount of money is going to make any difference in the world, but cumulatively, it makes a huge difference.
It really does. I mean,
Huge difference.
as in every movement, you've got to do the grassroots as well. And you just have to have that just accumulation of demand. And I mean, just little things. One of the reasons it's hard to invest in women-led funds is because it's new. And so, as we all know, the financial markets and financial advisors are very conservative, and they don't want you to invest in first-time managers because there's not a 10, 20-year track record. Well, so I've just had to push. Actually, I saw Suzanne Beagle just came out with just today, there was a new guide to how to invest in first-time managers, because that's where women and people of color, they're often the first-time managers, and somewhere we need to break out and do that and learn how to do that.
I also read, because I read this stuff voraciously, and it might have been Suzanne's research, I forget. But here's the thing, you're right. I've heard all of that too, about how, oh, you can't invest in a first-time manager, they don't have a proven track record, yada, yada. Guess what? First-time managers outperform. Outperform.
Huh.
Who knew? It
Yeah.
is completely counter to what we would have thought. I mean, just prior to the 2008 financial crisis, I was actually thinking about starting my own fund because I had a lot of knowledge around the new emerging technology for development, the new emerging technology for financial services. I was an expert in that area, and I couldn't get anyone to consider investing because I would have been a first-time manager, et cetera. I was a woman, et cetera, right? All of that stuff. And then the crisis hit, and that was the end of that. And then I got offered a job to go live in Indonesia, and I was like, okay, done. And then I never went back. But I really, I was thinking about that at one point, and I faced all of these prejudices that I think are just that. They're prejudices, and they are not necessarily true or valid. So
And
yeah.
I will say with these clubs, so again, my original club has really this year come around to converge on this issue of investing in either funds or enterprises led by BIPOC and women leaders. And so we're just have been in a deep learning curve there, and it's been very exciting.
Well, I think that's great. And I love that your club has been together for 3 years. So that's another thing that I think is really important. The club that I belong to in Seattle, they've been together for probably close to 10. So I think that these clubs, they come together and then people find so much value in them, and they find so much value from the community that gets created that they stay in them for a really long time, which I think is absolutely fabulous.
We'll see that. We designed this to be a 6-unit curriculum because we didn't want it to be too daunting for the volunteer leaders or for the people they were recruiting. And, so far that seems to be the right decision. It's hard. You can't fit that much into 6 units or to 6 meetings. Again, we're just getting in the surveys, the assessments, but in the final assessment, we ask people, do they want to continue to meet? What would they want to do? But I think there is that there'll be that moment, and not everybody will want to continue. When in my circle, about a third of the people decided that was enough. They were good. Some of them were they just purely were angel investors, and they really, that's what they wanted to do, and they were done. And we recruited a few more that have stuck with us. So it's it's I think even if you do one for 6 units and maybe decide to come back again. I mean, my dream in the future is, of course, that we using resources like from your book and all the things that we're creating, that people will be able to come back and do a little more a higher level one, perhaps, when they're ready for it.
Well, and I'm really excited about that idea. And I know you and I are already collaborating on this and looking at how we can, in fact, use the book to build a curriculum. Another colleague of ours, Jill Bamberg, has just finished a 15 module curriculum for the book. That's going to be available through Creative Commons for anyone to access. But you and I are talking about how do we take that and build on it and modify it specifically for your club so that there can be different phases of this and the content can continue. Because truly getting to action too, I think I've been in some groups where we maybe are focusing on a particular asset class and we meet on a monthly basis for the purpose of actually doing the work of moving our money. Because again, time is a big issue, right? And so you may learn about something in a club, but then if you have to go off and do all that work on your own, you don't necessarily have the accountability. But if you're all doing it together and you're splitting the effort, then it's much more likely you'll get to the end game that you want to get to. So yeah, so I'm thinking about, you talked a little bit about your vision of the future. Is there anything else you want to share in terms of where you see some of the work you're doing with these clubs going?
Well, we're in the midst right now of thinking about the community that we have both within the clubs and after people have been part of clubs. So we're looking right now at a membership that would be available to those in clubs, alumni of clubs, people who sign up. Because I really believe that if we build that sense of community of women trying to make change in their own portfolios, improve the world, and change the capital markets, it will be really powerful. And I'm hoping that we can build on that network so that women come together and advocate. They do work together on, whether it's advocating with the SEC around the kind of metrics they want to use, or they come together because they want to invest together. So it's not fully formed, but we're working on trying to come up with enough reasons and benefits to keep people in this community, and do that in a way. I mean, we want to be allies and partners to all the other networks as well. So just trying to think that through right now.
And in terms of the community, aren't you also thinking about building a parallel or similar community of support for these women? So a community that having within your community and including within your community women who are financial advisors who can help provide the support you need to become values aligned, women who are in the angel investing community, women who are creating the products that we're excited to be able to invest in. Those are part of your goal as well, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's been remarkable, I think, the way people have stepped up to lead circles or to be, create materials or to be expert speakers at meetings. And I mean, there's a desire to help the broader community and bring everybody along. And so, yeah, we're still thinking that through, but sort of this idea of pathfinders or guides so that you're part of this network and you can call on these people and that it's safe. It's not about them trying to recruit you into their fund that they've just started. I mean, that's the tricky part, but so far that has not been hard to navigate. I mean, people are just looking long term. This is really about a long term support community.
Right. Well, I love that you're talking about that spirit of collaboration because I obviously found it myself when I was writing the book, right? And you're right, these women are just showing up and they're willing to just donate their time for free. I didn't pay anyone who helped me write this book. None of them got money. Um, and it's sort of amazing how willing they are. And I think that part of it is that all of these women realize there's something really important here, and that only by working together and helping each other are we going to get to the end game. And so for them, this is just part of their ultimate goal as well. And I'm really excited about the collaboration that you and I have. I mean, I was inspired when I first started thinking about writing this book. I was inspired by a book that came out in the early 90s called The Beardstown Ladies. And it was really teaching women how a group of women in the Midwest came together, formed a club, and taught themselves how to invest in the stock market. And when I started writing this, I thought, that's what I want. I want to write the Beardstown Ladies for the 2020s and help women have the foundational information they need and then help them build the clubs. But when I met you, I realized I don't need to build the clubs. Ellen is building the clubs. We just need to help each other. And it's been wonderful to watch our relationship grow and blossom as we've been doing that over the last 3 years. So thank you so much for that companionship and collaboration. And I look forward to what is to come.
Oh, thank you. It's already been amazing. You've been very generous as we started this new cohort in sharing some of your materials before it hit the streets, even so that we could share it with the group. I mean, this cohort, we switched up the curriculum a little bit because we hadn't done anything. We kind of skipped over the values and money, and you had these amazing resources. And I know from talking to the circle leaders, they're really excited about kind of combination book club, investment club. That's the way they talked about it.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Fantastic. Well, more to come for sure. Thank you so much for being on my last Fireside Chat. I really enjoyed talking to you today. So thank you for that. And thank you to everybody who has watched these videos. You can find them all on Facebook, and you can find them all on the Activate Your Money YouTube channel. And I hope that they have been as valuable and interesting for you as they have been for me in making them. And we look forward to having you find Ellen on investforbetter.org and look at joining or starting a circle of your own. Thank you all for listening.